Welcome to Folkways, the Folklore of Britain and Ireland podcast. Hello and welcome to the show. Today we're making a seasonally appropriate visit to the Cave of the Cats, not just a hole in the ground, but regarded in early literature as a hinge between worlds, and fascinatingly as the origin of Halloween. Oweynagat Cave is located in County Roscommon, Ireland, near the village of Tulsk. Lying west of the River Shannon, the cave sits within a landscape called Rath Crowan, a complex of over 240 archaeological monuments. The English translation of its name, Oweynagat, is Cave of the Cats. So this cave within this rich landscape is renowned in Irish mythology as a portal to the other world. Not only this, but it is strongly linked to two powerful figures, a goddess and a queen. Firstly, Morrigan the goddess, a war and sovereignty deity, is often depicted emerging from the cave to herald winter or battle. In other words, hard times. But the cave is also associated with none other than Queen Maeve of Connacht, and the cavern even bears an ancient inscription with her name upon it. We'll get to this later. As mentioned in the introduction though, one of the cave's most intriguing features is its link to Samhain, the pre-Christian festival marking the end of harvest and beginning of winter. Legends describe wild cats, three-headed monsters, saffron-coloured birds with foul breath that strip trees and destroy crops, multiplying hordes of pigs and other destructive creatures emerging from the cave specifically on Samhain night to lay waste to Ireland. Tales like The Adventures of Nera, 10th century, portrays the cave as a doorway to the other world, from which a person on Halloween might enter and have the future foreseen. In the tale Bricriu's Feast, heroes confront ferocious cats who pour from the cave's mouth, while the Camoiga Mucravar, 12th century, offers a dire warning about the cave, explicitly calling it the gate to hell. Collectively, these stories are describing Oweynagat as a type of portal, a place of liminality from which a human may cross over on Samhain, but equally, where a plethora of phantasmagorical beings can cross to our world. Tonight, we cautiously step into this Cave of the Cats. Drawing from primary sources, we'll walk the ancient hills with Queen Maeve. We'll face the monstrous cats that tested Ulster's mightiest, and with Nera the warrior, we'll cross into the she realm on Samhain Eve itself. On this wild and windswept night, place your ear to the entrance of Oweynagat, and over the rattle of the wind you may start to hear the quiet tongue of ancient voices deep within, beginning to speak the cave's secrets. Welcome to Folkways Season 4, Episode 8, Cave of Cats, Ireland's Gateway to Hell. Part 1, Queen Maeve's Revenge. So let's start here at the aforementioned Rath Crowan archaeological complex, an area that's called Cruachan in early Irish literature. Ring forts swirl through the landscape, barrows, passage tombs older than Stonehenge, and one strange and mystical cave which lurks at its edge. This whole area features strongly in Irish mythology. It is the royal seat of Queen Maeve and the kings of Connacht. In the Táin Bó Cúailnge, Ireland's Iliad, The Rathcrone area is central. This epic was written in the 12th century, but rooted in tales from the 8th century or earlier. The story begins with a pillow talk scene with a royal couple, Ailill and Maeve, are lying in bed in their stronghold at Cruachan, Rathcrone. They start to compare their possessions after Ailill remarks that Maeve is much better off since marrying him. Maeve haughtily disputes this, boasting of her noble lineage as the daughter of the High King and her own premarital riches, including a personal guard of thousands, not to mention the province of Cruachan as her inheritance. To resolve the argument, they summon their stewards the next day and have all of their treasures, gold, silver, jewels, livestock and more, displayed and inventoried in the Great Hall. Astonishingly, everything balances out exactly. The same amount of cauldrons, swords, spears, shields, goblets, tunics, cloaks, cattle, sheep, pigs, and even the number of attendants. The sole exception is a magnificent white-horned bull named Finvaach, the white-horned one, born from a magical heifer that had swum across a lake from the lands of Maeve's father. But now the bull belongs to Ailill. This creature is a symbol of supreme fertility and prestige, and it tips the scales in Ailill's favour, making Maeve's overall wealth inferior. Refusing to accept any disparity, especially one that undermines her status as a powerful queen, Maeve vows to acquire a bull of equal or greater value. She learns of the brown bull of Cooley, an even more renowned beast in Ulster, and she resolves to seize it by force. This act of acquisition would not only restore balance, but would actually assert her dominance over the land. Mobilising the armies of Connacht and her allies, Maeve launches the massive cattle raid that escalates into a full-scale war, defended heroically by the young warrior Chulainn. In essence, what starts as a domestic quarrel spirals into Ireland's greatest mythological conflict. As the 12th century Táin Bó Cúailnge writes, they all came on until they reached Cruachan, that is, Maeve's royal home. The air hums with tension. Bards chant, druids murmur over entrails. Maeve, the Queen of Queens, summons her council. Quote, "So then the 4 provinces of Ireland were gathered together in Cruachan, highlighting the escalation that this marital dispute has taken. Everybody's there. Pillars of smoke rise from fires. The scent of roasting boar mingles with a tinge of fear on the wind." So, this story places this major event, this war, as both beginning and ending in the Rathcrone landscape, essentially, recognising its function as a royal seat and a place of gathering for the peoples across Ireland. The Táin Bó Cúailnge doesn't explicitly mention the Cave of the Cats, but I wanted to open with this story to give some context about the landscape that the cave sits within, and this area's central role in Irish mythological thought. I also wanted to mention Maeve, since, as I said earlier, the Cave of the Cats bears 2 Ogham inscriptions carved into the stone, likely early medieval. One carving at the entrance reads, "Stone of Freca, son of Maeve." 2. The Cat's Test. The name Cave of the Cats may come from Bricriu's feast, an 8th century Ulster tale in the Book of Leinster. So very succinctly, rivalry is stirred up among 3 great champions. To decide who will be the winner, challenges are set. After a beheading game, a motif we see in Gawain and the Green Knight, then comes the challenge of the cats. Quote, "Cats from the cave of Cruachan were let loose to attack the warriors, i.e. 3 beasts of magic. Huge magical wild cats with glowing eyes and sharp claws prowl. 2 of the warriors climbed to escape, 2, quote, made for the rafters having left their food. Only the 3rd warrior, the legendary Cuchulainn, stands his ground in the face of the magical felines, gripping a beam. The cats prowl and strike repeatedly, but he holds all night until dawn. The cats retreat, defeated. The cave proves its role, a source of trials that reveals true heroes." Three, Samhain's Threshold. The Cave of the Cats' link to Samhain is clear in the adventures of Nera from the 11th century Book of the Dun Cow. So, it's Samhain Eve at Cruachan. Ailill and Maeve prepare a feast. But as a grisly backdrop, there are captives hanging from gallows outside. The warrior Nera goes for firewood and he sees the dead figures. One corpse eventually speaks to him, quote, "By the truth of thy valour, take me on thy neck, that I may get a drink with thee. I was very thirsty when I was hanged." So yes, the corpse is asking Nera to carry him to a source of water. Nera complies with this strange request and carries the dead body to a house. But spirits then attack. Quote, "Great was the darkness of that night and its horror, and demons would appear on that night always." That is Samhain. In folklore, you'll often hear of the fairy host, so the fairy band. Quote, "He went after the host then into the cave of Cruachan. Thereupon they reached the sidhe of Cruachan and went into it." A she-king asks, "What brought thee into the sidhe?" "I came in the company of thy host," Nera explains. The question by the she-king is implying that mortals ain't usually seen round here. While in the sidhe realm, Nera experiences a vision of the destruction of Rath Cruachan and the deaths of Ailill, Maeve and their household, which a she-woman explains will come true unless he warns his allies. He gathers evidence from the other world to prove the reality of his journey, for who will believe him? Nera returns to our earthly realm before the next Samhain and warns Ailill and Maeve to prepare for the events he has foreseen, their destruction. He explains how he knows this, that the gates of the other world open at Samhain. In a furious response, Connacht forces storm the prophetic cave, destroy the sidhe and seize whatever treasures are within. Nera, meanwhile, remains in the other world, not to return until the end of time. The Adventures of Nera is especially significant for explicitly stating that the fairy mounds or entrances to the other world are open at Samhain. The fairy mounds of Ireland are always opened about Halloween, it reads. But valuable too are notes on how Nera gains access to the she-realm in the first place. It is only through carrying the dead man around his neck that he meets the fairy spirits, who are then able to take him to the other world within the cave. If he had never hoisted the dead man down, this entire adventure would likely not have happened. I've spoken quite frequently now regarding a complex link between the human dead and the other world. Please see my bonus section, Are the Fairies the Dead? In the adventures of Nera, the human corpse can be seen as a type of key. Because Nera travels with the corpse, he meets the fairies, and because he's met the fairies, he gets to enter the cave's other world. Four, meet the Morrigan. The goddess Morrigan is one of the most important of the Tuatha.ie. She is associated with death, warfare, magic, change, prophecy, and fate. She is a crucial figure. Stories of her appear in the primary mythological cycles of Ireland, even lasting into more modern Irish folklore. You have probably heard of her. The Metrical Dindshenchas has a poem, Odras, 12th century. It tells of Odras, a herdswoman from Roscommon, whose cow is stolen by the Morrigan. Bovines are back again. Odras follows the Morrigan across the landscape to Cruachan, the royal and ritual centre of Connacht. Exhausted, Odras falls asleep near the cave. At that moment, the poem says, the dread Morrigan came out of the cave of Cruachan, her fit abode, and breathed upon Odras so that she slept forever. So the Morrigan emerges from the cave and kills Odras with her breath, claiming her for the other world. We've discussed that the cave of Cruachan is presented as a passageway between the mortal world and the she. When the Morrigan emerges from the cave, she is crossing that threshold, bringing the power of death and the other world into the living. The poem's phrase, her fit abode, in relation to the cave, is crucial. It anchors the Morrigan's mythical residence at Cruachan, thus linking the cave to the Morrigan's own themes of transformation, her fit abode. We couldn't end this episode without mentioning the word liminal, which has appeared in a number of ways in this show. Landscape-wise, caves can be seen as liminal points, air meeting earth. For time, we then have that most porous calendar date of Samhain, which is when crossings between worlds, we are told, can happen. We also have the theme of the ultimate crossing, death, which is shown with Nera helping his corpse friend, plus in the deathly associations of the Morrigan. But we also have another liminal key, which is you. Who you are and your conduct matters in relation to the cave. In the story of the three warriors and the cats, heroic courage must be shown. The other two warriors, we are told, climbed the rafters to get away, quite terrified from the supernatural kitties. It was only Chulainn who stood his ground and fought the whole night. It was only hours upon hours of courage that made the cats finally retreat, crossing back through the cave to their own world. In the adventures of Nera, Nera shows remarkable bravery and a type of honour with helping the dead man. Nera could have said no to the odd request for water from a corpse. He could have simply gone off and enjoyed the Samhain feast with Queen Maeve. But Nera didn't do this. He accepts the request. He journeys with the man, nay carries him to help fulfill this final wish for water. And this is no small feat, since the corpse is described as horrible. Nera's journey is a combination of heroic courage, moral action, but also respect for supernatural forces. Without the mix of these aspects together, the portal to the other world may have forever remained closed to him. So in summary, we have the place, the cave, the time, Samhain, but also the content and courage of your heart. Five, same she, different day. Whilst it can't be 100% proven that the cave of Cruachan featured in these different texts is our beloved Oweynagat, the cave of the cats in Roscommon, the topographical and symbolic descriptions do match. Whilst yes, there are other caves in this area, the cave of the cats is the only natural cavern in the complex. A limestone fissure forming a lengthy underground passage which you can walk. The other places are man-made, they're short stone tunnels or storage chambers, and such descriptions do not fit the medieval texts. Whilst there is some nuance, most scholars on this subject do agree that the cave of Cruachan featured in the texts we've looked at is likely to be the same site that later generations called Oweynagat, Cave of the Cats, the name just naturally evolving over time. We should also remember that little note on the cat cave stone carved around the 5th or 6th century. The inscription's presence reinforces the cave's deep-rooted connections to the Connacht queenship and otherworldly motifs, centuries before they were recorded in the medieval literature that we've looked at today. That inscription in the cat's cave reading, "Stone of Freka, son of Maeve." A very warm welcome to October 2025's Almanac. Old English, Winter Fulleth, Scots Gaelic, Indaver, Welsh, Hydref, Manx, Jerry Fowler, Irish, Jerafoa. October marks the transition from harvest to winter, with now noticeably cooling temperatures and the first frosts signalling the deepening of autumn. It's hard to think of October without thinking of Halloween, a cross-quarter festival date along with Imbolc, Beltane and Lunasa or Lammas. As Ronald Hutton writes in Stations of the Sun, there isn't lots of supporting evidence that Halloween was a festival of the dead as we now seem to think of it. However, fret not Halloween fans, of which I'm definitely one, for what there are plenty of motifs of people being in danger due to the festival's liminal nature, i.e. on this date, watch out for those fairy hills are open, as the Adventures of Nera that we just looked at earlier explicitly states. Keeping with today's Irish theme, medieval Irish sagas frequently use Samhain as a narrative device for supernatural encounters, implying the audience would understand the date's significance. In these tales, mortals may have to deal with a motley crew of demons, fairies and monsters, otherworldly beings that test mortals' endurance during this festival. These themes, drawn from 10th to 12th century manuscripts like the Book of Leinster, emphasise the need for vigilance during the festival of Samhain. And we have that line again from The Adventures of Nera. Great was the darkness of that night and its horror, and demons would appear on that night always. The Ulster cycle tale, the Togmarc Emire, 9th to 10th century, mentions Samhain as a quarterly festival, framing it liminally as the point when summer goes to rest, marking a vulnerable transition from light to dark halves of the year. Emir challenges the hero Cuchulainn to prove his valour by remaining, quote, sleepless from Samhain when the summer ends until the season of the same day next year, during which he must perform heroic feats amid implied otherworldly peril. Staying awake Samhain to Samhain, that's not fair. Come on, be reasonable. In the boyhood deeds of Finn, 12th century, on Samhain, the young Finn enters a fairy hill. Also, an otherworldly monster emerges annually on Samhain, lulling Tara's people to death-like sleeps with a magical harp. In the Dialogue of the Elders, 12th century, heroes slay 3 sisters from Cruachan's cave. It's back. The 3 sisters transform into werewolf-like beings each Samhain, emerging to hunt livestock and terrorise the land. If there isn't evidence of Halloween being a festival of the dead, we are told that supernatural beings can emerge from their shees, or if we're up in Scotland, from their sheans during Halloween. The fact that they're able to do this at this time period, that this date is when this happens, is of note. But I'd also add May Day, Bjortana, Samhain's calendar opposite, as also containing these themes. May Day's darker supernatural edge has largely been forgotten, unfortunately, but it contains many of Halloween's aspects, essentially liminality bringing danger to those unaware. So this Halloween, avoid hills, definitely avoid caves, and run from any packs of moggies who seem to be looking your way. October's clear dark nights favour stargazing. You might see Pegasus, the winged horse, rising east, Andromeda with its galaxy, Cassiopeia, and the start of Orion the Hunter towards the month's end. You may also spy the Orionids meteor shower, which is active throughout October, peaking around the 21st to 22nd, with 15 to 20 swift meteors an hour. In October, hedgerows feature ripening nuts and very late berries amid falling leaves, with cooler weather concentrating flavours but risking early frosts. You may see rose hips for use in teas, syrups or jams, sloes, ideal for a winter sloe gin, hazelnuts, check after windfalls, you can eat raw or roast them, and of course those sweet chestnuts, roast or use in stuffings. And to see us out, here is October by Linda Paston. How suddenly the woods have turned again. I feel like Daphne, standing with my arms outstretched to the season, overtaken by colour, crowned with the hammered gold of leaves.